station. This is KTRK TV. How do you hear me?
I have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Brother and fellow astronaut Scott Kelly.
Good morning, Scott. You're going to be talking to Tom and Sharon here in about 30 seconds. Tom and Sharon in about 30 seconds.
Twins, but they are best friends. Scott Kelly is currently the commander on board the International Space Station, and during this entire ordeal, he's been on board the ISS in orbit some 220 miles above the Earth.
And it's a rare opportunity to talk to anyone on board the space station live. This morning, we are. Scott Kelly joins us now live from outer space to talk about the progress his sister-in-law is making. And Scott, good morning. The progress that Gabby is making seems to defy the odds. That has got to lift your spirits.
Yeah, it's really good news. Every time I talk to my brother, it seems like she's making really small steps, which I think in this type of injury is really, really critical. And looking, we're all optimistic about her outcome.
Scott, when was the last time you had a chance to talk to your brother? And just from what impression you're getting from him, how do you think he's coping with all of this?
I actually, I probably talk to him at least twice a day, in the morning when I get up and then right before I go to sleep. And so I spoke to him actually this morning. And I think he's coping as well as you can in this type of situation. Certainly it's, it's very, very difficult, but I think he's doing as good as you could expect anyone to do.
Scott, back to that fateful day, how did you hear about the shooting of Gabby, and what went through your mind? Mark said his was just disbelief for a number of minutes.
Well, I got a call from the control center in Houston that the chief of the astronaut office, Peggy Whitson, was going to give me a call in a few minutes on a private space-to-ground channel. And when you hear that, you're kind of, expecting bad news to get a call without any heads up to have Houston tell you that the chief of the astronaut office is going to, call you soon. And, I talked to her a couple of minutes later, and she, told me that, Gabby had been shot, and, there were certain unconfirmed reports of things, and that was that. It was a pretty quick conversation.
Now, when you started getting those first initial reports, had you heard, like some people initially had, that she had died? And what was your first reaction when you may or may not have heard that?
Well, I told Houston as soon as I got the word that I wanted to hear any news that the news was reporting, and they complied with my request. So they told me, and again on a private channel, the tragic news that was, fortunately turned out to be incorrect. So, I had heard that, and I knew it was unconfirmed. So it was, of course, a horrible thing to hear. And but I still hope that, since it wasn't confirmed, that it wasn't true, and it turned out, that was the case, which was, fantastic news to eventually hear.
Scott, you two are best friends. Has it been frustrating to be 220 miles above the Earth and not be at Mark and Gabby's side?
Well, certainly, Tom, I would prefer to be there with Gabby and my brother and other friends and family. But I don't get easily frustrated, and I recognize that, the best thing I can do in my situation, which is here on the space station, is to just continue to do my job, do it as best as I know how, and then to support my brother in how I can support him from here, and other friends and family, which is frequent phone calls. I call him often. I call my kids more often than I was able to talk to them, and so it's not really frustrating. I kind of understand that's these are the cards we're dealt, and we have to live with them.
Now, you mentioned how you were able to talk to your family more often because of this, especially your children, and both of you having 2 children. How have they been able to cope with this, and how have you been able to communicate all of this information to them to keep them calm?
Well, they were certainly very, very upset when they had thought Gabby had died, and they were still upset, of course, just from the fact that she was shot and is going to have a long recovery, and so I talk to them often, and kids, fortunately, I think are somewhat more resilient in a lot of ways than adults, and. They're doing better, and, they certainly care for her and, are upset about it, but I think they'll be okay.
NASA, Scott, as you know, has named a backup commander for STS-134, but knowing your brother, knowing Gabby, do you think Mark will be on that mission?
I don't know. It's possible. And it's also possible that he might not be. It's a decision that he'll make in consultation with the astronaut office and other folks at NASA, and there are a lot of things to consider. But I think he'll make the right decision, and I think he'll also weigh what Gabby would want in this scenario, and I think we'll know something about that in a couple of weeks, within a few weeks from now.
And we can only imagine just how difficult this probably is for you to try to cope being so far away, as you've mentioned, and try to continue your training and all of that. Can you give us any idea on just how NASA may have helped to prepare you for all of the training that you've been doing, but prepare you for something like this?
Well, we have, prior to flight, we have training in how to cope with these kind of situations, and although you hope never to experience one, we have had something like this. We have had people experience death of family members and such in the past. So I think the training helps with that, and there's a lot of avenues for communication, not only with your friends and family, but we have frequent conferences with psychologists and psychiatrists, just as a matter of course, as a matter of being in this isolated environment. So there are avenues for us to talk to people if we need to in this type of circumstance.
Scott, one final question, and that is, I found your statement very interesting, that you look out the window of the space station every day and you see that peaceful world, and yet when you get in close, there are these kinds of things that can jar anyone. Your feelings now as you face the recovery of your sister-in-law and help your brother along?
It's like I said, it's a horrible tragedy. It's definitely, it's definitely been sad. A little bit of anger, but I think in time people get over that. What I would like to try to focus on, the more of the positive things, and maybe give a little bit of positive advice. And what we do here in space is incredibly challenging, and our country faces a lot of challenges. And the way we deal with challenges in this kind of environment, doing things that are very, very difficult, is through teamwork. And I'd like to see maybe more teamwork, with people, not only in our government, but everyone in meeting the challenges our country faces. So, hopefully, if anything good can come out of something like this, it's that we learn to work better together.
All right, Scott Kelly live in the space station. Much more in our later newscast. Thanks, Scott.
All right, and that's all for now. We're going to join GMA in progress and have a lot more, of course, with Tom.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the KTRK portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from ABC Primetime.
Station, this is ABC Primetime. How do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Thank you so much, Commander Kelly. Thank you very much for talking with us, so I'll begin now. Your brother told us that you call 5 or 6 times a day. What is it you most want to say to him in this moment?
Well, during, difficult situations, I think it's important to, have frequent contact with your, family members and people that you're close to. And my brother and I are very, very close. And, I think it's, it's good for him, for me to be talking to him. And it's also good for me. So I think it's a kind of a two-way thing for us, that it's, somewhat comforting to both of us. And just the way the technology works on board the space station, he can't call me, so I have to call him, and I've been doing that fairly frequently.
Is there a word, a sentence that you say to each other in tough times?
We're not that touchy-feely kind of people, and so. When I call, I just ask them, usually the first thing is, how's Gabby? And then, how are you doing? And, we just talk about, mostly her and her condition, but other things like we normally do. So, no, I wouldn't say there's any, specific sentence that, thing that I say to him every time to try to, make things better for him.
I just want to note that 200 miles up, I've been accused of a touchy-feely question. Is the commander still there? I just want to make sure you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I didn't know if you maybe you might have been cut out. I didn't know if you had if there was another question on that.
Oh, okay, good. No, you issued a statement, a very moving statement, at the end of which you said, we're better than this. We must do better. What did you mean?
I think our country, faces a lot of challenges, and we face a lot of challenges here in the space program, and constant. And the way we deal with those and the way we overcome them is through teamwork. And I think, I think in America today, with all the challenges we do face, we need to show more teamwork, and I think that works, and I think it'll help us, not only get past things like this, but see a better future for not only ourselves but for our children and those who come after us.
I know that in sheer human terms, there are a lot of people who imagine that at this moment it must be so difficult for you not to be here, that you must wish in 1,000 ways you could simply walk out a door and come back. Is that true?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, because I'm kind of a realist, and I don't, I understand this is, this is a situation I'm in. I'm certainly would prefer to be, there to support, Gabby, my brother, my kids, friends and family. But, the fact that I can't, and, even if it was a tragedy worse than this, there is just no way I am coming back to Earth before March 16th. Unless there was some kind of major emergency on the space station. It's just, we know that going into this, into a flight like this, so I know I'm not coming home. So, I think the best I can do is just continue to do my job as I've done all along, and, support my brother and my kids and others as best I can through the means we have on board the space station.
You said in your statement that Congresswoman Giffords is a brilliant patriot. Tell us the thing you first noticed about her when you first met her.
You know, what's great about Gabby is she treats everyone the same. And, you know, she's always interested in their opinion, interested, you know, in, you know, what their lives are like, interested in trying to help them. And it doesn't matter, you know, from what, you know, walk of life they are, from what party they are. She's genuinely a, you know, a kind, caring person, and incredibly dedicated to her job in Congress and to our country. And not that this should happen to anybody, but for it to happen to someone like her makes it even, you know, even that more just shocking and, you know, such a horrible tragedy. And not to, you know, and I don't want to just focus on her because this is a horrible tragedy on many levels. I mean, a 9-year-old girl, you know, other people that were killed and injured. It's just, you know, it's just really terrible that things like this happen in America and, you know, around the world.
How closely can you follow the news, and are you following it?
You know, normally the ground sends up, I've asked them to send up the news on the weekends prior to this, only really as a precursor, such that the connection is made so I can watch Houston Texans football games on Sunday. So generally I would have the news because they had to put something on the television. And but since this happened, actually until today, I've had it on basically, you know, continuously since the you know, since the shooting occurred. So we don't have continuous coverage, but maybe, you know, 45 minutes an hour I've had, you know, basically live television news on, and I can't look at it all the time because I'm very busy, but, you know, a few minutes here and there I can look at it. We also have a kind of a spotty but real-time internet connection, so I can look on news sites there, and of course we have a telephone.
We had a chance to spend some time with your brother on the weekend, but tell us all what you most want people to know about him.
Well, he's very dedicated to, you know, his wife Gabby and his kids. He's very focused when it comes to dealing with things like this. So I think, you know, it can only help Gabby to have someone like him kind of, you know, interfacing with the doctors and other people to, you know, enhance her recovery. And, you know, he's just good at dealing with, you know, these types of crises. And I think, you know, he's probably, you know, certainly he's hurting, and it's, you know, there's a lot of grief and sadness involved, but also he's very focused. And I think, you know, I think he'll be okay in the long run, and especially as Gabby continues to improve.
Commander Kelly, we thank you so much. We wish you a safe return, and we thank everyone on the station, and thank you, Houston.
Well, you're welcome, Diana. It's good to be able to join you today. Thank you.
See you back here on Earth.
Thank you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you, KTRK TV and ABC Primetime. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.